Good morning, Bills Mafia. A little breaking news on a hump day in the middle of August. The hold-in has come to an end. The wait for a James Cook extension has come to an end. Before 8 a.m. this Wednesday, August 13th, James Cook officially inks a deal with Brandon Beane and the Buffalo Bills, and now we set our sights to the 2025 season with nothing to worry about now and nothing to worry about a year from now or years from now when it comes to the running back position. This has been the biggest story surrounding the Buffalo Bills this offseason. It is the first time in Brandon Beane's near decade-long tenure in Buffalo that he had ever dealt with a situation quite like this, and it winds up getting done. Before we even dive into the details, let's just be happy that we got it done. Brandon Beane gets it done. Pagula, the Buffalo Bills get it done with 2 preseason games remaining and just under a month left until the season. Plenty of time for James Cook to get his legs underneath him, get ready to rock. Not that he hasn't been getting ready already. He did participate in the vast majority of training camp mandatory OTAs. But now it's not a worry. It's not lingering over his head. It's not lingering over the team's head. And there's no more distractions. Hell, they barely focused on it in Hard Knocks Episode 2. So it wasn't like it was the biggest thing in the world in terms of a massive distraction. It was something that was certainly a big storyline, but no longer. James Cook inks a deal with Brandon Beane and the Buffalo Bills, extends the contract extension. And I mean, we've been talking about this for so long now that I was just so genuinely confused on what was the angle here on both sides. I didn't quite understand why they had gotten to the point where James Cook was willing to hold in. Because you show up to mandatory minicamp, you show up to training camp, practice for nearly 2 weeks, and then hold in the last couple of sessions. And I had started to think, are they really as close as we're being told? Because if they are that close, then why is it that James Cook is all of a sudden out of nowhere holding in? They were closer than I personally thought, and they actually, of course, were close all along, it seems like. It's not like this deal got done overnight. I wonder why it took so long. Let's take a look at the details. If you're just waking up, which I'm sure you are, and you're just tuning in, good to have you in. Breaking news here once again. On Wednesday morning, James Cook signs an extension with the Buffalo Bills. The deal includes the most guaranteed money for a running back in the last 5 years. This is funny. We just talked about this on Monday night. We were wondering what was going to have to happen in order to get it done. And we were basing it around the Kyren Williams contract, which I thought was a fair base model. Before Kyren Williams inked his deal, of course, going into his 4th year with the LA Rams, just signed an extension with them last week for $11 million APY. I had felt that based on the production from Cook and Kyren Williams, that those 2 contracts should align. But we talked about this Monday night. Obviously, with Cook being next in line, you don't just get the same contract the previous guy got. Usually it goes up, it goes up, it goes up, it goes up. This is how the quarterback market has gotten to what it's gotten to. And really all of these positions, with the salary cap continuously increasing, all of these positions have seen substantial pay upgrades. We haven't really seen that with the running back position. It maxes out with Saquon Barkley at $20 million per year. But we're seeing it all throughout the league where, of course, the next man up, regardless of position, more often than not, is going to get more than the previous guy unless it is a outlier of a circumstance. And I think the 3 running backs that are currently being paid at the top of the league, Saquon Barkley, Saquon Barkley, well, Cook's up there now. Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, and CMC. Those to me are the outliers. Those are the Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes of the running back class. So with Kyren Williams' deal having been in place, I thought it was a fair starting point, but you weren't going to get the $11 million, nor was Brandon Beane going to get less than that. There was, potential that there was talk out there rather that people were hoping that Brandon Beane would be able to come in under what the Rams got Kyren Williams for. That's just not going to happen. James Cook is arguably better. I think many would say he is better than Kyren Williams. You weren't going to get a cheaper deal or the same deal. Brandon Beane got nearly the same deal, however, APY, and we were talking about this the other night. What was it going to take? And it wound up being, if you were with me on the smoke break on Monday night, it wound up kind of being exactly what we had concluded. Because if you remember, we were talking about the top of the market, and then we were talking about that mid-tier within the top 10 there and how to find the middle ground. We had said that usually the best deals in business, both sides of the party or both sides of the deal, usually feel like they didn't win the deal. A sign of a great deal means that both the signer or both the signees, both parties involved in the contract, walk away from it feeling like they could have done better, don't feel like they lost, but don't feel like they won. And the conclusion that we had come to was that James Cook would feel like he won substantially if he wound up getting that $15 million mark that we were originally hearing about early in the offseason, which would put him up there with CMC, Derrick Henry, and Saquon Barkley. Obviously, Brandon Beane would win if he were to get James Cook at that same contract level as Kyren Williams, $11 million per year or less. How do we get to the middle ground? Then we talked about Jonathan Taylor, who makes $14 million per year. So we were looking at the top end of the running back market. Jonathan Taylor just outside of that top three. Kyren Williams at 11, the seventh highest paid running back. What's that perfect middle ground where both parties feel good about the deal, but they both feel like they didn't dramatically win, dramatically lose? It wound up being exactly in that sweet spot. $12 million per year. James Cook comes in higher than Kyren Williams, also with the most guaranteed money that a running back has gotten in the last 5 years, according to Adam Schefter. Here's Adam Schefter's tweet from about 15 minutes ago. Quote, "A deal has been reached. Two-time Pro Bowler running back James Cook and the Buffalo Bills reached agreement on a contract extension per his agent, Zach Hiller and Matt Leist. The deal includes the most guaranteed money for a running back in the last 5 years. So what are the terms surrounding that most guaranteed money? Well, here it is. According to Tom Pelissero, James Cook has reached a 4-year, $48 million contract extension with $30 million guaranteed. His agent, Zach Hiller, Matt Leist, tell him and Ian Rappaport. So you're looking at Tom Pelissero's tweet here, by the way. Despite logging just 48% of snaps last season, Cook will now make $12 million a year and look to bring Buffalo its first Super Bowl alongside NFL MVP Josh Allen. That's one hell of a sentence right there. So when we were talking about this the other night, we were talking about what would it take to get it done? What does James Cook need in this situation in order to be satisfied, no longer continue with the hold-in, lock in a deal, and get ready to rock with the Buffalo Bills for the foreseeable future? The two things we brought up were coming in higher than Kyren Williams, reaching that middle spot, and then the guaranteed money, of course, was huge. That is the main takeaway here from this contract. Kyren Williams' deal, he got $23 million guaranteed. When we were talking the other night, we were wondering if a $12 million... It's funny. I mean, usually when it comes to contracts, especially ones like this, you're kind of just throwing your theories around. Just the other night when we were throwing our theories around here in the chat, I believe we had come up with 12 to 13 million a year and 27 to 28 million guaranteed. James Cook ended up coming above that at 30 million guaranteed and 12 a year. The pivotal point here for James Cook, which I feel like ultimately got this done, is the $30 million guaranteed. That's $7 million more in guaranteed money than Kyren Williams just got a week ago, going into the same exact season of his NFL career, his fourth season. So that's a substantial win in terms of guaranteed money for James Cook. Now, I wonder if this was the tipping point, right? We had heard that they were close. So maybe they were close in terms of the APY for a while here, but it was the guaranteed money that had James Cook not feeling as though he was getting the deal he was looking for. I have to think, and we've been talking about this for how long now, so it's finally a breath of fresh air, to be honest. It's relieving that it's no longer going to be the weekly cycle of here's the next chapter in the James Cook saga, going from wanting to get paid $15 million to not showing up to non-mandatory minicamp, then showing up to mandatory OTA, saying he's going to show up to mandatory training camp, of course, showing up and participating in both of those, then holding in, then showing up to the training camp, then showing up to the preseason game, fully dressed, warming up, and not participating. Then coming into this week, the deal's done. I would have to think that the question that we were constantly asking ourselves, and that was, what is the holdup here? What is not getting this done? It feels as though it might have been that guaranteed money, and there's no way James Cook can't be satisfied with the amount of guaranteed money he just got from Brandon Beane and the Buffalo Bills. Once again, that's $7 million higher than what Kyren Williams just got a week ago. Let me know in the chat what you're thinking about this extension. Of course, $12 million felt like it was the threshold for a lot of Bills fans, right? It felt as though $12 million was the threshold. It was the max amount that people were willing to go to. But once you saw Kyren Williams sign for 11, it felt as though 12 was going to be the minimum, did it not? It really felt like once you saw Kyren Williams get that deal, you knew you weren't going to get the same deal. It was only logical to think that $12 million was going to be the starting point. I feel as though both parties in this situation have to feel good about getting this deal done in the manner in which they got it done. Yes, you would have liked to have got it done earlier. Yes, you would have liked to have avoided James Cook holding in for several practices. But at the end of the day, it only took 4 or so practices to get this done. One preseason game in the books before this gets inked. You now have nearly 4 weeks until the start of the season. Well, actually, 3 weeks now. I'm not trying to add any number. I'm not trying to add days to that, by the way, as if we're not counting. But to think James Cook, a week ago was looking at the market being set at $11 million per year, $23 million guaranteed, to come in a week later at $30 million guaranteed. That's a substantial win, I would say, for James Cook. And I wonder if that was what was holding this up. And I wonder if that's what Brandon Beane was kind of tossing up in the air, trying to justify getting this deal done. Taking a look in the chat, seeing what you guys are thinking. Frank's coming in. He's saying 12 mil, good in his book. Bartek, good to see you. Good morning, BT. He's saying in a couple of years, we'll either know if it was an overpay or a great deal. And that's usually how it goes with any player. Let's hope he stays healthy. You factor this in. It's a good point you make, Bartek. Excuse me, I have to have my breakfast, by the way. A little breakfast for him, a little DC, a little liquid diet. It's the breakfast of champions, the breakfast of champions here, folks. Not sponsored, by the way. Breakfast of champions. You can't beat a breakfast of a nice Diet Coke and nothing else on a Wednesday. I'm the picture of health. So you're saying, in a couple years, we'll know whether or not this was an overpay or a great deal. I'll tell you right now. So James Cook, this is a 4-year extension, right? So there's no way it's going to be an overpay. As long as this offensive line continues to play at the caliber in which it is, it's not going to be an overpay because you're getting James Cook at $12 million. I think this now makes him the 7th highest paid running back in the league. Let me check the numbers here in terms of the highest paid running backs currently in the NFL. I believe this makes him the 7th highest paid because Kyren Williams became the 7th highest paid with his contract last week. So it's not like he's resetting the market here, right? With this 4-year extension in 2025, he's coming in at the 7th highest paid. I would have to imagine 4 years from now, it might still be towards that top 10, but with guys coming around the bend that are going to be getting contracts, right? I mean, Bijan Robinson is a name that comes to mind. I know Ashton Genty, of course, is a rookie, but if he's going to be what the Raiders expect him to be, he's already getting an insane amount of guaranteed money from the Las Vegas Raiders. He'll be up for a contract. He'll be in the same position James Cook's in 4 years from now. And if he ends up being the centerpiece of that offense that the Raiders drafted him so highly to be, $12 million could look favorable for the Bills. And it was never going to get cheaper. It never does. Ask Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys. Inevitably, they're going to end up paying Micah Parsons $45 million and allowing him to hold out throughout the duration of the offseason here. They did the same thing with Dak Prescott. They did the same thing with CeeDee Lamb, right? It never gets cheaper. And if you want to retain the guy, you're going to end up having to come to the table substantially at some point. Why not do it while you can? And Brandon Beane has been great at this. There's a reason why going into year 9 as the GM of the Buffalo Bills, this is the first time he's ever faced a situation where the financials cause some turmoil between him and a player. He's been great at getting deals done. He's been great at getting deals done with high value, really. You look at the amount of guys this offseason Brandon Beane extended. Now James Cook being the last one, by the way. I mean, kudos to Brandon Beane. He got every deal on the table this offseason done. This was the last one that was lingering, and he eventually did get it done. And it was the toughest contract, you could argue, at least publicly, that he has had to work through since being the GM. And Brandon Beane got every single deal done this offseason, nearly all of them for beyond fair market value. I mean, you look what he got Christian Benford for, and I understand Sauce Gardner, household name, considered by many to be maybe the best in the business at the corner position. But you look what he got Christian Benford for, it was about half the amount of money that Sauce Gardner got. Is Christian Benford Sauce Gardner? I don't think many would say that. But is he half the player Sauce Gardner is? I don't think many would say that either. Great value. And we've seen this time and time again from Brandon Beane. I think $12 million here, a couple of months ago, and this is how this stuff works, which is once again to Bartek's point, 4 years from now, is it an overpay or is it a great deal? Even 3 months ago, right? Even 3 months ago, it felt like $15 million might be in the realm of possibilities in order to have to get this deal done with James Cook. And now all of a sudden you get it done for $12 million. And I think when you look at the circumstances surrounding the situation, this is a good deal for the Buffalo Bills. And I do think it's a good deal for James Cook. He just beat the most recent contract signed by a running back, most guaranteed money in the last 5 years. But Brandon Beane also comes in at $12 million per year. When you have multiple guys making more than that, you'll have other guys coming around the bend that'll be set for contracts that could potentially be making more than that. It really does feel like it's one of those deals, once again, where both parties feel like they weren't fleeced and both parties feel like they didn't fleece the other party. That's the sign of a good deal. To me, this emblemizes a good deal. Many people a few months ago felt as though $12 million might be a bit rich. But I think we can realize today that this is what the market is going to be now for running backs. And if you want to keep the guy that you drafted in the second round who has been great for you throughout the duration of his young career here and has only seemed to be getting better and better, you're going to have to step up to the plate. And Brandon Beane did that. Brandon Beane gets it done. And I just wonder now that the question that I wonder if we'll get more details around this, but I wonder what was the barrier to entry here? And I wonder personally if it was the guaranteed money. And I wonder if Brandon Beane was trying to come in closer to that Kyron Williams contract. And, James Cook was saying, I'm not willing to do that. I'm going to need more guaranteed money here. At the running back position, you could obviously every position in the NFL is a dangerous position. It's the most dangerous sport you can possibly play. And the injury rate is 100%. But at the running back position, it's more substantial than any other position. You are essentially a human battering ram. And in order to preserve, in order to get the most out of your career, and in order to maximize on the limited time you do have to be at the top tier level of that position, the guaranteed money really is what matters the most here. And that's why I think James Cook in this situation has to feel satisfied about what he was able to just get done. It's the most guaranteed money in a half decade here. So you're looking at the current contract market, or the current running back market, rather, in terms of average money per year. So Saquon Barkley over $20 million at number one. So it's Saquon, Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, Alvin Kamara. This contract, in terms of average money per year, aligns James Cook with Josh Jacobs of the Green Bay Packers at $12 million flat. So this now has James Cook tied for the sixth highest paid running back in the NFL. So James Cook is now tied with Josh Jacobs for the sixth highest paid running back in the NFL. Here is who's making more than James Cook in terms of the average money per year. Alvin Kamara, Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, list ends there. So you only now have, including Kyren Williams, you only now have, I believe, 8 running backs making above $10 million. Aaron Jones and Kyren Williams being the other two not mentioned in that list of other guys. So the list of running backs making more than $10 million is quite small, but it bottoms out at that 10. And then you get into some crazy numbers at the top. You have a couple of guys at that $12 million range. Now 3 guys at that $12 million range. Alvin Kamara at $12.2 million per year. And then Jonathan Taylor with that bump up to 14. Then you get into the 15 plus range with the 3 Hall of Famers there. But in terms of fully guaranteed money, this now has James Cook with the second highest. Let's see here. Actually, no. Let me switch my settings here because it doesn't list it based on total guaranteed. I'm looking at that tweet from Schefter, by the way, though, where it says the deal includes the most guaranteed money for a running back in the last 5 years. But is that just based on extensions? Because Ashton Genty, coming out of the draft here, Ashton Genty got, I believe, $36 million in fully guaranteed money. Where's that number at? Saquon Barkley's at $36 million fully guaranteed. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so you have Ashton Genty, right under $36 million fully guaranteed. So that has to be, I guess, most guaranteed money on an extension. But either way, I mean, that to me is what matters most if you are the player. A lot of these guys, when they sign their contracts, they're infatuated with the APY because they want to say that they're the highest paid player in the NFL. We hear this all the time. TJ Watt, this just happened with TJ Watt. TJ Watt now becomes the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL, in NFL history. How many times have you heard that? It happens in the offseason. It seems to happen on a monthly basis where some guy just becomes the new highest paid guy. That's based on APY, not based on fully guaranteed. Right? The guaranteed money is the money that matters most, because even though you could be the highest paid player in the NFL in terms of what you're making per year, you might not see all that money depending on how your career goes and depending just what ends up happening, injuries, or you fall off a cliff in terms of your talent, whatever. You might not see all that money. The guaranteed money is what you're going to be taking home regardless of what happens. That's what matters the most to these players in terms of what they're actually going to be compensated. It doesn't seem to be talked about as much because everyone's so infatuated with that APY number that allows you to say so-and-so is now the highest paid player at X position, or so-and-so is now the highest paid player in NFL history at this position, or not quarterback, whatever else. This is where I think James Cook makes out substantially here. I think he really got a great end of the bargain with that $30 million guaranteed. Trying to find some more details here, seeing if anything else has just come out. This, of course, just breaks a half an hour ago. If you're just joining, James Cook signs an extension with the Buffalo Bills, a 4-year, $48 million deal with $30 million guaranteed. So Adam Schefter, by the way, as we were just talking about, was able to put together a list of all of the players the Bills re-signed this offseason and their deals. And once again, shout out to Brandon Beane for an incredible offseason here. I thought they had a terrific draft. Thought they did a really good job of adding to the defense, not sitting around and resting on what they did last year, also making some additions to the offense as well based on who they lost. But when you're talking about retaining the guys that are in-house, right? You're talking about retaining the guys for the foreseeable future that have been pivotal pieces to the organization. This is where Brandon Beane shined the brightest this offseason. So you look at Adam Schefter's tweet here, and here are the deals that got done this offseason. Of course, Josh Allen getting his 6-year, $330 million extension. We talked about Christian Benford, that 4-year, $76 million deal. Greg Rousseau, 4 years, $80 million. Bernard, 4 years, $50 million. 4 years, $53 million for Khalil Shakir. And now James Cook rounds it out at 4 years, $48 million. And this was a busy and successful offseason for Brandon Beane. To be able to get all of these deals done in one single offseason and to be able to feel good about all of them, really. I mean, I know there were people out there that did not want to get to $12 million on James Cook, but that was what it was going to take. If you wanted to retain James Cook, that was what it was going to take. You were going to have to move off of James Cook if you wanted to spend less than $12 million. I think it's a fair deal. Obviously, Josh Allen, you can give him 6 years, $10 billion for all we care, so long as he's a Buffalo Bill until the day he hangs the cleats up. And then I just think the Christian Benford deal is one of the biggest steals in the NFL right now. And then all of these other guys, too, Khalil Shakir, Bernard, and Rousseau, all of those deals coming in at a value in which you feel good about, especially compared to what the market looks like for those positions across the league. So, really here, I understand that it was probably not an ideal last couple of months here for Brandon Beane, just in terms of how this whole thing played out. But he did end up getting it done, and you have to give him credit for getting to the point where you were able to put this to bed with several weeks remaining here before the start of the season and really now have no worries going into the 2025 year. You just have nothing to be concerned about right now in terms of drama or outside noise, whatever. I had thought that this deal was going to get done next year, but give credit to James Cook here too. He really stood on his business, as he's been referring to this offseason here, business, business, business. James Cook really stood on that business. And I think that certainly helped get this deal done. I mean, you have to be vocal, whether fortunately or unfortunately. And I think Brandon Beane alluded to this the other day on Hard Knocks when he was just saying that this is the way it goes now in the NFL. This is what you're going to have to do if you want to get paid and you kind of want to put the pressure on the organization. Now, the Bills still had the leverage. If they did not want to get this deal done right now, they didn't have to. They could have waited until next year. They still had the franchise tag. They were never going to use it, in my opinion, but they had options. They had James Cook under contract going into this year for $5 million. They had the ability to franchise tag him next year should they have wanted. They also could have just extended him next year and waited to see another year from James Cook before deciding to commit to an extension like they just did. They still had the leverage. But I think James Cook put them in a spot where they decided to get it done now just because they know what they have going right now. They were coming off of a year where they were arguably the best offense in the NFL. This was arguably the best offense the Bills have had in a quarter century here. You have a top-tier O-line. You have an MVP at quarterback. You're scoring 31 points per game. You don't want to have a situation where you're worried about one of the more pivotal pieces of your offense not being available, not being at his best, or just being disgruntled. And it was looking like it could end up being the case based on everything we've seen here the last month. But credit to Brandon Beane for getting it done, and credit to James Cook for doing what he had to do in order for it to get done. At the end of the day, no matter how it ended up getting done, the thing that matters the most is that it did end up getting inked, and it's no longer a worry. Thought this was something that it was going to end up being discussed at this time next year. I mean, especially when James Cook showed up to mandatory OTAs and then, of course, showed up to training camp and was practicing throughout. I just, at that point, felt as though this time next year was when this was going to be brought to the table and get done. But then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, James Cook with the hold-in. Now I think it makes more sense. Hearing that they were closer than we had thought, now it makes more sense. Because once again, it's not like this deal was drafted up last night. I would have to have imagined that this deal was in the works for a while, and they were close to these type of numbers for a while. So now I think maybe it's safe to assume the reason James Cook held in was because there was one aspect of this contract that just was not getting to a point in which he felt comfortable with. And maybe the hold in was what ended up getting it to where he wanted it, where he felt better about it. But I would be stunned to think that, there was rumor that Brandon Beane wasn't trying to get this deal done at all. That's clearly not the case. And I never felt that either. That was being discussed. We talked about this the other night where there was a potential of Brandon Beane just not looking to get a deal done. I never thought that was the case. I never thought Brandon Beane had the desire to not extend James Cook. Always felt as though he wanted to. It was a matter of doing it in a way that made sense. And in looking at the deal that just got done, this particular structure here, the $30 million guaranteed to me feels like the one thing that was probably argued on the most. But I don't think you were going to get it any cheaper or any better at this point next year. And if Brandon Beane was looking to get a deal done this offseason, which I think we can now safely assume he's been trying to do for some time now, had to have been closer than I ever thought and was willing to come around to doing whatever it had to be done in order to narrow that gap and end up locking this in. I had always felt that they weren't close because I thought the hold in, I guess it makes more sense now. Like I've been saying throughout the last month or so here, a lot of this didn't make sense to me because of all of the unknowns surrounding it. We just didn't know exactly what James Cook was looking for. We didn't know the exact number that Brandon Beane wasn't willing to go over. We didn't know how much guaranteed money was going to be involved. We just didn't know much of anything. All we knew was that James Cook was there and all of a sudden then he wasn't. But now I think it makes more sense. They've had to have been closer than I ever thought. In the initial reporting that we got a couple of weeks ago saying that they were close on a deal, I think that makes a lot of sense. So if I were to make my own theory based on what's happened here, they've been close for a while. There was something that just was not getting over the hump, whether it was the guaranteed money or whatever. James Cook holds in. A week or so goes by. That ends up being the final push to get it to where it needed to be. Jeremiah's coming in. What a great start to this beautiful Wednesday here in Colorado. Let's go, Jimbo. Jeremiah is fired up about having James Cook extended for the future here with the Buffalo Bills. Rebels saying, Scotty, I completely agree. What's Scotty saying? Scott's saying, strange how this payday for Cook has so many fans negative. Yeah, you knew that was going to happen. There was going to be a contingency of fans that were never going to be satisfied extending James Cook for $1 more than $10 million. You knew that was inevitable, right? And I think a lot of the time, perception becomes reality. The perception surrounding the running back position is don't pay it. Just don't pay. Because the cycle of the position in the NFL has more often than not been draft a guy, get the most out of him, move off of him, draft another guy, and repeat that cycle. So many people are cognizant of that. They're also cognizant of the fact that the market is a bit more all over the place and certainly more suppressed than most other positions in the league. And you're seeing teams win without a top tier running back. The Chiefs have done it every single time that they've won the Super Bowl without having to pay a running back. You've also seen teams waltz to a Super Bowl championship with the best running back in the league. We just saw it 7 months ago. But there was always going to be fans that were not going to be satisfied with a James Cook extension, regardless of what the parameters of the financials looked like. They were never going to be satisfied. So Scotty's saying, with all the dead cap due to bad contracts, this is the hill you die on, $12 million a year. I don't know how you could. If you wanted James Cook to remain a Buffalo Bill, I don't know how you could be down on this contract. Because you can't have it both ways. You couldn't want to have James Cook remain a Buffalo Bill and not pay him $12 million a year. It's what the market became. Now, if last week Kyren Williams signed a bottom barrel deal at $9 million per year, maybe we're having a different conversation because the market just looks different. Kyren Williams, similar numbers to James Cook, going into his fourth year as well. Why are we coming in at $12 million if the Rams were able to get it done for such a lower number? $11 million for Kyren Williams. You weren't going to do any better than that. So if you're mad over $12 million, would you have been mad over $11 million? Because you were never going to beat that. It was never going to happen. And I think that logical minds were aware of this months ago. You were never going to get James Cook for less than $10 million. At the end of the day, James Cook had 20 touchdowns a season ago and is coming off back-to-back 1,000-yard years. The Bills hadn't had a running back do that since LaShawn McCoy hung it up. If you wanted to keep the guy around, you were going to have to pay him what they wound up paying him. I don't think Brandon Beane could have gotten a better deal here. And based on the guaranteed money, I don't really think James Cook could have gotten a much better deal. I feel like both parties really did win here. Brandon Beane was not going to get James Cook for less than $12 million a year. It wasn't going to happen. Maybe a few years ago, maybe a few months ago, you thought $10 million, maybe we can get that done, right? You're looking at the contracts currently around that $10 million mark. It wouldn't have been the most insane thing in the world because you do have Joe Mixon around that amount of money, James Conner right at that amount of money, David Montgomery, Ramondre Stevenson. Those guys are making less than $10 million. Aaron Jones at $10 million flat. So I understand a couple of months ago thinking, all right, $10 million, that seems to be what I feel comfortable with. That seems to be the max I'd be willing to go with. But the market is the market. You're not going to come in under a guy who just a week ago comes in at $11 million per year, is in the same year of his career as the guy you're trying to sign. And the guy you're trying to sign is arguably better than that in which the guy, than that of the guy who just signed a week ago. Kyren Williams, he touches the ball far more for the Rams than James Cook does. But James Cook also has much more efficient numbers based on the amount of times he does touch the ball. Their numbers are so similar, yet James Cook touches the ball far more infrequent than Kyren Williams. So you could argue the efficiency of James Cook is superior to that of Kyren Williams. And I think that James Cook is an overall better running back. There's aspects of Kyren Williams' game that might be better. I think his blocking ability is better than that of James Cook. But I think James Cook is a more elusive running back, a more explosive running back. And I think that they need to utilize him more in the pass game because I think if they do, that's an area that I think he excels in as well. But at the end of the day, the moral of the story here is they were never going to get him for less than $12 million. So you can't have it both ways. Once again, you just can't have it both ways. If you wanted to retain James Cook, this was what it was going to take. And I would argue it was not going to be better than this. From Brandon Beane's perspective, you could very much argue that it was not going to be better than the deal that they just inked. Maybe you would have wanted to get Cook for less guaranteed money. Whatever. You weren't going to get him for less than $12 million a year. Now, maybe there's people out there that just, they abide by the code that is never pay a running back. Those people, fine. I get it. Whatever. You weren't in love with James Cook. You felt as though other guys could have similar production. You never wanted to pay him. You didn't care if it was $10 million. You didn't care if it was $15 million. You didn't want to pay him. Unless you could get James Cook for some ridiculous low ball deal, you weren't in play for retaining him. Fine. I get it. There's a lot of people out there like that. That's not some rare, uncommon take. There are plenty of people out there that live by that creed, and that is, we're not paying a running back. I don't care how great it is, unless you are Canton bound, unless you are the three guys I keep referring to, CMC, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, unless you are guaranteed to have a bronze bust in Canton, I don't want to pay for it. Those people, fine. If they have had that, staunch belief from the get-go, I understand being like, I'm not in on this. Fine. But there were so many people out there that thought that they had these two beliefs. I really want to keep James Cook. I don't want to pay him anything. Not how it works. I think that that's because of the perception surrounding the running back market, where we constantly are exposed to these contracts. We're constantly exposed to the idea that running backs do not often get paid. So naturally, you're just in the position where James Cook's set to get paid for your team, and you're thinking, well, why do we got to pay our guy? Nobody else is paying their guys. But you finally have a guy worth paying. A guy you drafted, a guy who seemingly is getting better every year, and a guy behind this offensive line that's going to thrive. He's just going to. You can't you simply cannot overstate how valuable the run game has been to this offense the last couple of years. You got Josh Allen going into the prime of his career here, right? During the beginning stages of Josh Allen's career, the run game was non-existent and the offensive line play was mediocre. You have Josh Allen now going into year 8. And the run game is now a massive asset to this offense. The offensive line is the anchor of this offense. And what you've seen is the Bills offense evolve into a two-dimensional offense that no longer requires defensive coordinators to focus on Josh Allen and Josh Allen alone. You have got to respect this run game because it commands respect. And there's no secret as to why the Buffalo Bills, after losing Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, Mitch Morse, go into a year last year where everyone expected a downfall on offense. It's no secret as to why they were able to not only shatter expectations, but really have one of the best offensive years in franchise history and perhaps the best offensive year since drafting Josh Allen. The run game and the offensive line. Early in Josh Allen's career, hey, Josh, snap the ball, run around until you literally, you fall over. I mean, seriously, snap the ball and just do something. That was the approach. Josh Allen, get under center, get in the gun, snap the ball, run around, spin around 3 times, clap, dance, run over a guy and chuck it down the field and make the most amazing play you've ever seen. Now, granted, the guy can still do that. He can still do it better than anybody I've ever seen. But he doesn't have to do it every single play because it's no longer a necessity. And this is what's opened up this Bills offense to being a much more well-rounded offense than even we could have expected in the beginning of Josh Allen's career. And James Cook has taken advantage of that. Even with a limited role compared to maybe these other guys at the top of the running back market, a role nonetheless that he has succeeded in 2 years in a row now, and a role that I think he continues to succeed in heading into this upcoming year behind that offensive line, with Josh Allen being, of course, who he is. Divine coming in with a super chat. Assuming that the contract disputes were due to the guaranteed money, whose side are you on if you had known it was about the guaranteed money on Monday? Great question. That's a great question because, like we've been talking about, I've been constantly wondering which side I would lean based on what I knew. And I had said on Monday night, if Brandon Beane wasn't willing to come in at the Kyren Williams deal, if he was looking to get that exact same deal or less, or I wouldn't say exact same deal because I'm sure he would love to have gotten the exact same deal. And you could argue it wouldn't have been unfair. Hey, Kyren Williams signed last week. Here's his deal signed. But that's not unfair. That's what the market is. But I had said that if Brandon Beane was trying to come in under that number, there's no way I can side with him. It makes no sense. And I never thought he was trying to do that because the guy's too smart. He's been a GM for this team for nearly a decade and has done a hell of a job in that role. He knows better than anybody that just wasn't going to happen. But for the off chance that was what was holding this up, I obviously couldn't sign with Beane there. It would make no sense to me. If James Cook was pounding the table, demanding $15 million, I couldn't side with James Cook. How could I? It's unreasonable to me. It's unreasonable to come in demanding that amount of money when the only guys making that amount of money are veteran Hall of Fame running backs. It just doesn't make sense. Now, the guaranteed money, you're asking me, what side would I have leaned had I known it was over the guaranteed money? Well, it's funny you bring that up because the other night we got to this conclusion where we were discussing what could be the holdup here or what could get it done. And we had brought up the idea of that guaranteed money being more than what Kyren Williams just got. It ended up being a good chunk more, $30 million. If I had known that it was over the guaranteed money, I would have been interested over the amount in which was being disputed, right? Because clearly this amount of guaranteed money wasn't on the table immediately. Obviously. So what was it at on Monday, right? What was it at last week or a couple weeks ago? What was it at? If I had known it was over the guaranteed money, I don't know. Once again, knowing what I know now, I do feel like this is an extremely fair deal on both ends. I think James Cook slightly wins in this scenario because of the amount of guaranteed money. So it's a great question you're asking me because I don't know if I'm leaning heavily on one side or the other, because to me, this just comes down to a good negotiation at that point where the guaranteed money is what you end up walking away with. That is what you are guaranteed to get. And man, I got to tell you, in trying to think of what side I'm on here, I genuinely believe that this is a perfectly down the middle deal with a slight bump towards James Cook. Now, once again, to answer your question, it depends on how much lower Brandon Beane's guaranteed money was at the time. Then maybe I would have had to have leaned James Cook or Brandon Beane, depending on that number. If Brandon Beane was trying to come in, I don't know, around Kyren Williams at that 23, maybe I'd lean Cook just because he's next up, arguably the better running back. You could argue, give him more guaranteed money. I think that I would, in that scenario, though, when we're talking about which way I would lean, Brandon Beane or James Cook, if it was over the guaranteed money, probably James Cook, to be honest. I'd probably lean to the side of James Cook here. Because like I said earlier, the contract can look as inflated as you could possibly want. You can spin any contract into seeming like it's great. It happens all the time. These agents do it all the time. You get the contract details and they look huge. The numbers look massive. But then you read the contracts and you realize, yeah, so-and-so might be the highest paid player at X position, but it's not guaranteed. The vast majority of it isn't guaranteed. The team has an out 2 years from now, whatever. And then you really get down to it and you're like, yeah, you know, APY, this is a good deal for the player, but it's not nearly as great as it's being propped up to be. The guaranteed money is what matters the most. And this is why I think I'd lean with James Cook, because he wanted to walk away knowing no matter what happens in the position that I'm playing, I have one opportunity to get this contract extension. You never know if you're going to get another one. I mean, at the running back position, getting a second one, very, very difficult to do. It's really hard to do. Getting one extension at the running back position is very difficult in the NFL, much less two. This is where I think I would lean to the side of James Cook, because the guaranteed money is what matters most. And I don't think X amount of money more on the annual value would matter more if he was getting less guaranteed. So that's where I'd lean. Richie coming in. Good morning, Richie. We'll talk about Hard Knocks in a minute. We're already on here, so we'll talk about Hard Knocks in a minute. I was going to do a Hard Knocks episode today anyway, so we'll just incorporate that into the episode here. Actually forgot about that and talking about this. By the way, funny. No, we'll talk about it in a minute. This is a whole different Hard Knocks, is it not? This is if you're not a Bills fan, I don't know how you're enjoying this. I can't lie to you. Like if this was the Kansas City Chiefs Hard Knocks, think about if it was the same exact thing we're watching right now with the Bills, but the Chiefs. I mean, I'd be covered in vomit, covered in it. You'd have to strap me down to the chair to watch it, because it's a puff piece. And nobody loves a Buffalo Bills puff piece more than the bearded guy on your screen who sounds like he smokes a pack a day. Nobody loves it more than I do. But I'm not interested in a puff piece on any other than 31 organizations in this league. Certainly not. I could care. You know? We'll talk about Hard Knocks in a second. Richie got another one. Bot, my boy, he says, sorry I'm late. Late, Richie. It's 8:30. How can you be late? I'm just glad to see you're up and at it. Richie's saying, I said 12 to 13. We got 12. Now let's get to work. Lombardi is ours this year, baby. Book those Santa Clara tickets. Yeah, you did, Richie. You said 12 to 13. I got to be honest. I'm shocked I didn't get to 13. This is where I am. Once again, I mean, you guys can let me know in the chat. And mind you got to let me know where you were at initially. If you were in that camp of, I just don't want to do this ever. I just don't want to pay Cook. Love the guy. He's great. He's been awesome. Get another great year out of him. And, you know, maybe we go the Ray Davis route, or maybe we dip back into the draft, whatever. But if you were in the camp of, I want to get Cook done, I want to get a deal with Cook done, I just want it to make sense for this team financially, let me know how you feel, because, and let me know if you're aligned with me on this. I don't think it could have been much better for both sides. Cook wins on the guaranteed side of things. But the Bills win in getting a deal done that I think a few months ago many people thought was going to be a lot higher. The $13 million a year, would it have shocked anybody? Would $13 million a year have shocked anybody with Kyren Williams just signing his deal and Jonathan Taylor being on that outside looking into the top three there? Would it have shocked anybody? It wouldn't have shocked me. We even said it the other night that it just felt like the 12 to 13 was going to be the threshold, and because of James Cook holding in, the higher amount of money there seemed more likely just because of the hold-in. $12 million per year, I don't know how you're doing better than that right now. I don't. Once again, it was never going to get cheaper. This time next year, God only knows what it would have been. And, you know, be thankful, by the way. This is what I just can't understand about teams like the Cincinnati Bengals, or the best example, the Dallas Cowboys. Brandon Beane knew he wanted to extend James Cook, right? He knew it. I felt that he wanted to wait till next year because the sample size wasn't great enough yet. That's what I was under the impression of. James Cook, 3 years in the league, 2 good years, 1 really good year. I had thought Brandon Beane, if he was going to want to pay a running back, which they haven't done, and if he was going to want to pay a running back top of the market money or close to it, another year of, wow, that was really good, let's sign up again for this, made sense to me, right? That just made sense to me. I never thought it was because he didn't want to retain him. I had always felt, and I thought this was a fair way to approach it, I always felt Brandon Beane might want to see 1 more year of the James Cook experience before inking that deal. But I never thought he didn't want to ink the deal. Always felt that he did. So if you know you want to get it done, and you know it's not going to get any cheaper, and you see the Kyren Williams deal, and you see other guys that are going to be coming around the bend, it makes sense to get it done now. Knowing that he had been actively trying to work through a deal with James Cook. To be honest with you, I was under the impression for the longest time that they were just so far off on a deal that Brandon Beane wanted to wait till next year to get it done, to see another year from Cook. And then, of course, to see how the market played out and to see if it wound up being a year that was going to garner whatever we heard he was asking for, 15-some million. That's what I had felt. I felt that they were far off. Now I think we can come to the conclusion that they really weren't. So that was never really the question. The question was never whether or not Brandon Beane wanted to get it done or he was willing to pay a substantial amount of money. It was just the amount of money he was going to be willing to pay, and it was the amount of money that James Cook was going to be willing to take. But I don't think it's unfair to say that a lot of us, including myself, during the bulk share of the offseason here, just thought that they were not close on a deal, and the negotiations were slowing down as a result. and it felt like this was going to be picked up again next year. But what I can't stand about teams like the Dallas Cowboys is knowing you want to retain a guy regardless of whether you want to see another year. Jerry Jones didn't want to see another year of Dak Prescott or CeeDee Lamb. He doesn't need to see another year of Micah Parsons. You just wait and wait and wait, and the money goes up and up and up, and you inevitably end up signing the deal regardless. You signed the deal you knew you were going to sign inevitably at some point. Yet you waited until the last possible second. You get the worst end of the deal. The player's disgruntled. The player is unsatisfied with the way it was approached. He's unhappy with the organization. You got Micah Parsons putting a screenshot of the Notes app on Twitter. He's got so much to say about the situation, he can't even fit it into a tweet. He's got to screenshot the Notes app. And he flat out says, I no longer want to be a Dallas Cowboy. I guarantee you the Dallas Cowboys are going to pay Micah Parsons. So why let it get to the point where Micah Parsons has to go on Twitter and say, I don't want to be a Cowboy? You're going to pay him. You're going to pay him. Why wait to pay him and allow all this stuff to happen? Now you have all of this awkwardness with the contract. I mean, I'm sorry. I would be stunned beyond belief if Micah Parsons is wearing any other helmet other than the Dallas Star going into the next several seasons, because it's just the way that these guys operate. I don't get it. And then you look at the Cincinnati Bengals situation with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. You go from franchise tagging T. Higgins to then wanting to franchise tag him again, and then you finally pay him after franchise tagging him again. Jamar Chase, perhaps the best wide receiver in the league. What's taking so long? I mean, you could never tell me that if the Bills had a Jamar Chase, that deal wouldn't get done the day it could get done. What are you waiting for? That'd be like holding Josh Allen's feet to the fire. Jamar Chase is the Josh Allen of wide receivers. You imagine Brandon Beane holding Josh Allen's feet to the fire? Trying to nickel and dime Josh Allen. I mean, give me a break. And now they're doing it with Trey Hendrickson, too. Trey Hendrickson leads the league in sacks last year by a wide margin. And he still doesn't have a contract. I'm always in favor of getting a deal done, if you want to get it done, as soon as possible. Now, I know there's going to be people in here, and they've been calling me out throughout the whole talk about this James Cook situation. They're going to say, "But you never wanted to pay James Cook this year." No, I didn't. I did not. I didn't. Am I happy that they did now because James Cook was holding in and it's done and over with? Yeah, I'm satisfied. No question about it. I shouldn't say that. It wasn't that I didn't want to pay him. I understood not paying him this year. That would be the better way to put it. It was never that I didn't want to pay him this year. Fine by me. What does it matter to me? You pay him this year, you pay him next year. If you're going to keep him, pay him. I understood, rather, why you might not pay him this year. Because the sample size is so small, and within that sample size, last year was an outlier. It absolutely was. Last year was an outlier. And this idea that the Bills are the bad guys for not wanting to see another year of James Cook and the ability to get back towards that outlier type number before they signed a deal, that to me wasn't the most criminal thing in the world. Like that just wasn't a bad way to approach it, in my opinion. It was never that I didn't want to extend James Cook. You guys know I always have. Why would I not want to keep James Cook? You're not going to get better than him immediately. You're just not. The Bills have been waiting for a reliable running back for a while now. A while. No reason not to retain him. I always understood, though, because right off the bat, by the way, we had no time to even sit and ponder whether or not James Cook, whether or not you really wanted to retain him before it became a headline. Before you even thought about James Cook going into his fourth year being up for a contract, you were reminded instantly of the amount of money he wanted and that the contract needed to get done ASAP because that situation happened ASAP. It felt like almost immediately after the Super Bowl concluded, we had heard that James Cook had demands of a certain amount of money and wanted to get paid this year. That's why it became a thing, right? So then, of course, we sit around all offseason and talk about it because it was a headline for months. And it was never that I didn't want to pay him. I always wanted to keep James Cook. I was always understanding of the mindset of going into next year before doing it. Now, the reason why I was of that... Sorry, this fan, by the way. I just scared the shit out of my cats. My thigh got stuck to the... Shout out to Thigh Doc. My thigh got stuck to the chair. You have a leather chair and you're sitting in it for a minute, it gets stuck. So I went to go move, and like my leg came off the chair. Both these cats just... God forbid I wake up my love bugs over here from their 18-hour-a-day snooze. In my next life, I need to be a cat, by the way. I mean, could you have it better? When you're a dog, I mean, being a dog's great, I'm sure. Look at me. Yeah, being a dog's probably great. You ever ask one how great it is? You ever interview one of them? But compared to a cat, like a dog and a cat, the cat, what a life. You sleep 18 hours a day. You wake up, you eat. When you are up, I'm petting them 24 hours. I mean, they come up and cuddle. They are the most personable cats I ever. Love these guys. Would die for them. Love them. Big time. That damn Bills guy is saying, Z a cat guy, huh? Big time. My life has taken some weird turns once I got into my mid to late 20s. You know, things that I never anticipated. I mean, come on. You would have asked me, if you asked an 18-year-old about a decade ago his thoughts on cats, I'd be like, well, thoughts on cats, they're the worst. What's so good about a cat? You never see it. It's hiding under the bed every time you come over. They don't come up to you. They don't interact with you. You can't pet them. You can't do anything with them. What the hell's the point of having one? Caroline, of course, had cats her whole life, was obsessed with them. And the second we moved out together was the second we had to get a cat. And funny story about the cats, by the way. What an episode, by the way. James Cook, contract extension. Let's talk about cats. Quick story, though. We're on the way. We rescued, of course, because I think that's just the way to do it. My brother-in-law bought like a $3,500 hairless cat. I'm not going to be doing that. So we rescued. So we're on the way to the shelter, right? This is a new litter. We're on the way. We had one cat picked out. He was, set aside. We're on the way to get him. On the way, I'm not kidding you, like in the car driving to this place, Caroline gets a text message and it says, hey, these guys are inseparable. And it was a picture of the other cat, Tofu, next to Toons, who we were going to pick up, and just him and him alone. The lady at the shelter goes, hey, these guys are brother and sister, and they're like inseparable. They won't leave each other alone. Would you mind taking another? How do you say no? She sends a picture of the two snuggled together. They're kittens, by the way. You're heartless if you look at a kitten and aren't just like, oh my God. Sends a picture. You mind taking another? You imagine saying no to that? No, sorry, we're cool on the one. We'll just separate them. So we drive there thinking we're getting one. We walk in with two. And these have been my best little buddies ever since. But 10 years ago, not even 6 years ago, 5 years ago, I never would have thought I would have owned a cat. Never thought I would have even liked a cat. Now look at me. Unbelievable. It's amazing. It's amazing how the life does a 180 on you. Incredible. What the hell was I talking about? Oh, how nice it would be. Well, I was saying how nice it would be to be a cat in another life. You sleep all day and you eat and whatever else. The dog, you're out running around and you're going nuts and you're constantly worried about when your family's coming home. These guys don't care. These guys are on permanent chill mode. Permanent chill mode. For the life of me, can somebody circle me back to what I was saying before I scared the hell out of the cats and then all of a sudden got down a cat tangent? See, look at Pierre's got a love-hate with the cat. Had a cat for 4 years, still hate that little shit. Damn. Now I'm seeing the word had. I'm not seeing has, Pierre. I'm seeing had. Didn't end well. Didn't end well, the cat experience for the Kingpin. Lowe's saying you were talking about football. Yeah, I know that much. I think. I'm looking at the chat, by the way. You guys are talking about... Oh, Pierre said have. Okay, good. That's a sigh of relief. No, the cats can piss you off, though. You know the amount of scratches I have on my body right now from these cats? An infinite amount. So I get it. I'm seeing in the chat right now, by the way, a conversation. Okay, so now that James Cook is paid, do the touches go up? I don't think these two aspects need to be mutually aligned. I think they can be exclusive. Just because you pay James Cook doesn't mean you need to overemphasize his usage. You just paid him based on what he's done up until this point. And what he's done up until this point, yes, you're of course satisfied with it. But as we talked about a minute ago, I'm looking for the exact number. Who had it? Yeah, it's Tom Pelissero. You just signed James Cook to an extension off a year in which he took 48% of the snaps. So you're not paying him for the amount of touches he's getting, or you're not paying him for the amount of time he's out on the field. So I don't think you extend him and then say, okay, now that we're paying you, buddy, usage rate just went up. Let's think back to Stephon Diggs before the departure. And it wasn't a financial thing. Stephon Diggs was getting paid just fine. But it was more of a, this guy isn't happy, we got to get him involved. Do you remember how much that seemed to throw the offense off? You remember how many times Ken Dorsey would dial up a bubble screen to Stephon Diggs for no reason, just not his game at all? Do you remember the amount of forced plays to Stephon Diggs it felt like towards the end of his time in Buffalo? It's because they had an overemphasis on getting him involved for a reason outside of the X's and O's, a reason outside of running the best possible play on any given down. They were doing it for reasons that weren't necessarily the most beneficial to the football team on each and every down. They were doing it to keep Stephon Diggs happy. So you don't just immediately go into this year with James Cook's new contract and say, well, now he's getting paid, so buckle up. It's the James Cook show now, co-starring Josh Allen. What he's done up until this point earned him this contract. 48% of the snaps last year, he still got the contract. 48% of the snaps last year, over 1,000 rushing yards and 20 TDs. That's what earned him the contract, not the amount of times he touched the ball. So to think that they're going to up the usage rate, would you like to see it? I mean, I would like to see more of a usage in the pass game. I certainly would. But James Cook isn't a three-down back. They didn't just sign him to be a three-down back. He hasn't been a three-down back. It's like, it's like marrying somebody who doesn't want to have kids and then expecting them to want to have kids after you married them. You knew they didn't want to have the kids. Don't marry somebody and then think that you're going to change their mind just because you got married. You knew what you signed up for. Don't sign James Cook and expect that he's going to be a three-down back when he wasn't a three-down back before you signed him. They know what they have in James Cook. They know what they're extending here. They know exactly what they're getting. Don't expect to see some overhaul in his game or his usage because there's a new contract on the table. I don't think that's beneficial to anybody. The Bills need to do, here's what the Bills need to do. They need to do exactly what they did last year. Point blank. Don't get sacked. Don't turn the ball over. Score 31 points per game. I guarantee you do those three things, you're going to be doing just fine. You're more than likely going to be right back in the same position you were at last year, and that's knocking on the door of a Super Bowl. That's what you need to do. Protect Josh Allen. Josh Allen, continue to not turn the ball over. Offensive line, keep doing what you're doing. James Cook, keep running as well as you have behind that offensive line. Ty Johnson, keep doing what you're doing on third downs. Ray Davis, when you get your opportunity, take advantage. Khalil Shakir, keep impressing. Dalton Kincaid, Keon Coleman, step up. That's what needs to happen. What doesn't need to happen is, okay, James Cook, $12 million per year now. We need you out there for 25 carries a game. It's not the way that this team works, not the way that this offense operates, and it's certainly not conducive to this team's success. Pierre, is Rico up yet, by the way? Oh, my God. Is there any better rivalry in the history of time than Rico in the running back position? We all know his infatuation with Breece Hall. If it was Breece Hall, Rico would be if Rico woke up to a Bills extension for Breece Hall, 4 years, $20 million per year, Rico would probably throw a parade. Let me know if he's up yet, if he's texted us yet or not. I'm interested to hear his thoughts. What are your thoughts, by the way, Pierre? I know you're going to be feeling good. I'm interested to hear what Rico has to say. I'm trying to think whether or not he's going to be mad. I just don't know how you could be mad. I mean, Scotty brought this up earlier. I don't know how you could be mad. I mean, maybe you're not like, oh my God, this is the deal of all deals. Feel like Howie Mandel out here, the way I'm slinging around great deals. I understand that. I mean, it's not like it's not a league-shattering deal getting done here. But for the Bills, it is a notable deal for this year and beyond in terms of getting this done and locking in one of your best offensive players for the future and having it not be an issue this year. Ooh, Vadesh is saying Beane is addressing the media. I can't live stream it while I'm on the show in terms of like showing it to you guys. But I'm going to be monitoring Twitter here, and we'll talk about what Beane had to say. I'm interested to see what info he divulges, if any, in terms of the things we did not know just a few days ago. I'm just getting a general consensus right now on Twitter, by the way, of the vibe. I mean, from what I'm seeing, most people seem to be satisfied. I'm reading a tweet from Joe Marino, who basically is aligned with exactly what we just had talked about here this morning, right? $12 million, the word he used, the word that we've been talking about all morning. It's reasonable. It's reasonable on both ends. James Cook's not Saquon Barkley, yet he's not deserving of getting less than Kyron Williams. Reasonable is the number. The guaranteed amount of money, third highest for any running back. We talked about that. Saquon number 1, Ashton Genty number 2. It's a logical conclusion to this saga here. It was really the only one that made sense. And I do think James Cook comes out on the with the larger end of the stick slightly because of the amount of guaranteed money, but it was the inevitable conclusion here. Or at least it was not the inevitable conclusion, but it was the right conclusion, and I guess the inevitable conclusion if you wanted to retain Cook. The inevitable conclusion was going to be one of two things. Either this was the deal that was going to get done, something awfully similar to this, or he wasn't going to be a Buffalo Bill. But just reading through Twitter here, from the most part, I mean, from what I can garner, most people are satisfied with this. But whoever brought up the amount of touches, by the way, was an interesting point you made, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I just don't think they're correlated. I don't think the amount of money James Cook is making is now correlated to the amount of touches he's going to get. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The Buffalo Bills offense certainly isn't broke. All right, so Brandon Beane addressing the media right now via Joe Biscaglia. He's saying that Brandon Beane said, this is another draft pick we're proud of and we're excited to extend. He said the deal progressed late last night. I bet you they would have loved to have gotten this done before Hard Knocks aired last night, right? I mean, they would have loved to have done that. Beane missed the buzzer beater on that one. But now they can talk about it next week in the third puff piece for the Bills. And by the way, don't take that as a diss. We'll talk about Hard Knocks in a minute here. So Brandon Beane says to the media, when asked about why the hold-in for James Cook ended on Tuesday, Brandon Beane said, we had an understanding that we need to practice before we get back to the table. So they had to have been so close, right? Had to have been super close. And Beane's like, look, you got to get back out there before we can continue this. I can't have you continue to hold in here until while we get this done. We're close. You need to be out there. I mean, isn't the logical conclusion here that James Cook, they were so close on a deal? Now it all is making more sense to me. They were so close on a deal that he probably just didn't want to get hurt the last week or so here. I just never bought into the idea that they were really that close. I didn't think that they were. But it's obvious now, of course, that they were, and they have been for a while now. So Brandon Beane was asked, by the way, about the topic of conversation we were just having, and that is the utilization of James Cook, or the amount of utilization. And Brandon Beane said that they do see him as a 3-down player, but he also said they like keeping him fresh. I mean, it's not like he can't be a 3-down player. The question is he a consistent 3-down player? I think the answer to that is probably no. I mean, he took less than half the snaps last year. To think all of a sudden this year he's going to get 70% of the snaps, I don't think that. Does that even seem logical to you? A 30% bump in snaps? I don't think so. Why upset the apple cart? 3rd and short, you don't need James Cook out there. You got Josh Allen, one of the best short game runners in the history of the league. You got Ty Johnson, who's done an exceptional job in that role. Why do you need to do it? You don't need to do that just because you're trying to justify the dollar amount. It's like if you buy a Ferrari, you're not going to drive it in a Buffalo storm just to justify the fact that you paid $200,000 for the Ferrari and it's sitting in the garage. You're just not going to do it. It doesn't make sense. Take the Jeep out. Ty Johnson's the Jeep on 3rd down. And he's been who doesn't love a Wrangler? There's no point in busting out the Ferrari in a winter storm just because you have a Ferrari and you paid a bunch of money for it. Use it when it's working at its best and when it's going to be the most serviceable to you in the summertime. That's what James Cook has been for this team, and they have the answers in the other areas in which they don't have them out there. 3rd and short, to be 100% honest with you, wouldn't you rather Josh Allen running the ball on 3rd and short, or Ty Johnson, Ty Johnson's on this team for a reason. It's a small role, but a significant one at that, and one that he's done well in. There's a reason why he remains on this team. Red. The Reddin'. You dog. You don't need to hand the ball to James Cook on 3rd and 2. Or if it's 4th and 1, we paid James Cook, so forget the Allen sneak, give it to Cook. No. Why? Now, once again, though, he can do that in some capacity. Whether it be, you want to throw different packages in on 3rd and short. You don't want to constantly always rely on Josh Allen or Ty Johnson. Maybe you have a different package you want to throw in there that incorporates James Cook. Fine. It doesn't need to be every single time. Looking for some more quotes here from Beane. Beane's feeling good about the 5 contract extensions this offseason. He says, quote, "This is our young core. This is our new young core we're putting our money into." I mean, no question about it. It doesn't, with Josh Allen going into year 8 and him, of course, being the heart, the soul, the face, the team, you forget sometimes that this team is very much into a renaissance of youth. Never more so than this upcoming year. I mean, yeah, you still have the veteran presence that you're going to be relying on. Matt Milano, newly added Joey Bosa, Tre'Davious White back, Deion Dawkins. But the amount of young bodies being added here that are also not only brand new out of the draft, but of course the extensions here. I mean, all the guys extended are pivotal pieces to this team. Khalil Shakir is your best receiver. As of right now, Greg Rousseau has been the best on the team in terms of getting after the quarterback. Christian Benford's your best corner. Terrell Bernard's been terrific. He's not better than Milano when they're both healthy and out on the field, but as good as you could hope for at the linebacking position, especially when you moved off of Tremaine Edmonds a couple of years ago and made out like a bandit on that deal. And now Cook. For a deal that I think is more than reasonable, more than fair. A guy you drafted, which matters. So back to the 3-down situation. Beane said, as I mentioned, he did say that we do see him as a 3-down player. I mean, what else are you going to say? What do you want? What do you think Brandon Beane's going to say? No, we see him more as a, couple snaps here and there type guy. But Beane did say, quote, we do feel he can take more, but we like to use our 3 options and keep him fresh. I mean, that's the long and short of it, folks. Does that not make the most sense? Because he gave you the politically correct answer, as any master GM would. I mean, nobody better at the podium than Shawnee McDermott, Double B, in 17. And Brandon Beane's going to give you the politically correct answer every time. The politically correct answer when asked if James Cook is a 3-down running back is yes. You don't make a running back the 7th highest paid running back in the NFL and say no to that question. But what he followed up with, to me, is the authentic answer following the politically correct one in saying we do feel he can take on more, which is accurate. He can. I want to see more in the pass game, and I do think that he can be incorporated more on 3rd down than he has been, and he can be incorporated in this offense more in totality than he has been. You're going to see James Cook, I would argue, out on the field more than 48% of the snaps. That number is going to go up. But it's like I said, it's not going to bump up to 65, 70% of the snaps. I just don't see it. There's no need for it. But what he said at the end of that quote there is what resonates the most with me. We like to use our 3 options and keep him fresh. Why wouldn't you? You feel comfortable at running back 2 with Ray Davis. You go back to last year when James Cook missed the Jets game. Ray Davis stepped up to the plate, had a great game. And Ray Davis has been great in the moments that he's been given. For a running back 2, you feel really good about Ray Davis. And then, of course, in those short yardage 3rd down situations, you feel good about Ty Johnson. And this Bills team has a lot of respect and trust in Ty Johnson in those situations. Why wouldn't you utilize those 3? The Bills have one of the better running back rooms in the league. No reason not to utilize it just because you signed a new contract. Do I think that the number goes up in terms of the amount we see James Cook on the field? Yes. But nothing crazy. And I don't think this is going to diminish the role that Ray Davis and Ty Johnson have on the team. I think it'll be more similar to what we've seen than not, is the best way to put it. It'll be more similar to what we've seen up until this point than not. It's not going to be some drastic change. By the way, Pierre's calling his shot as I scroll Twitter here looking for Beane tidbits. Pierre says 2,000 yards incoming for James Cook. Who says no? I do. If you want to get 2,000 yards, then you're going to have to see James Cook have 210 carries. How about this, though, Pierre? How about this, gang? How about a 5,000-yard year from Josh Allen and a 2,000-yard year from James Cook, and this offense averages 39 points a game? How about that? Sign me up. So confirmation from Beane that the extension is through the 2029 season. So 25, 26, 27, 28. you have James Cook for 5 more years, guaranteed, or minimum. T. Miller is saying this is the contract that I expected James Cook to get. I think that that's fair to say, right? I think that I think a lot of people are around that $12 million mark. I don't know how you couldn't be. Once again, the number a few months ago was 15, was it not? That was the number being thrown around like crazy. Then Saquon gets extended by the Eagles at $20 million. And remember, James Cook tweeted out the eyeball emoji, and then everybody was thinking, oh, man, price just went up. Think about it like this, I guess. The day Saquon Barkley signed an extension that made him a $20.5 million a year running back, if the Bills were to have signed James Cook to this exact same deal that day, how would you have felt about it that day? You would have felt pretty good about it. Go back to where you were. I remember where I was, because I have that video. I mean, I don't know if you ever saw it. I edited it together because it was hilarious. The day before, literally the day before Saquon Barkley signed his new contract, I said, I just don't see a running back getting to 20 mil. I said, CMC's at 19. I could see Saquon getting right there, but I don't see 20 mil anytime soon. I don't see this massive overhaul of the running back market to where it busts through that number. And then the next day it happened. And I go back to when it did happen, and I remember thinking, if Cook wanted 15, did the price just go up? And does 15 now feel like a bargain? So go back to that point in time. If the Bills signed this same exact contract with Cook at that time, it would feel like a hell of a deal. It's the same deal today as it would have been then. I asked Pierre earlier, by the way, what he thought on this. He said, I'm ecstatic right now. I really think Cook brings the Thurman to Josh's Kelly. I love it. Both Canton bound would be the angle I think Pierre is taking there. Look, you win a Super Bowl. James Cook puts together a couple more 1,000-yard years, leads the league in touchdown a couple more times. You win a Super Bowl, then you can start having a conversation. But what James Cook has been to Josh Allen the last couple of years is invaluable. The mix of the offensive line and those two together really has ascended this offense to a new height. And under Josh Allen, that's tough to do. But it was necessary in order to allow this offense to no longer be the Josh Allen show featuring nobody, where Josh Allen was basically starring in a movie by himself. You needed a strong supporting cast. He's gotten that. Cognitive saying, I think it's a good deal, to be honest. We pay around the same amount of money for free agent D linemen all the time. Yeah, and no kidding. Why not pay one of our few offensive weapons? That's a good way to put it, right? I mean, that's true. We know where the money tends to go on this Bills team. It's on the defensive side of the ball, and with a rotating positional group, a rotating body of guys. I mean, a rotating list of names throughout the time in which Brandon Beane's been trying to secure a stout defensive line during his time here. By the way, what did I just see here? I wanted to say it. Where is it? Mr. Clayton saying, also Ray Davis can be the short yard bulldozer as well. I just, Ray Davis kind of had a feature last night on Hard Knocks a bit, and I had saw that Ray Davis is down about 15 pounds from last year to this year. He was at 220 last year. I think he's down to 208 this year. He said he feels a lot lighter, a lot more agile. He said he wanted to lose some weight so that he's not strictly just the bulldozer. So where you're right there, Mr. Clayton, he certainly can be that. He's lost some weight, and he said he's feeling a lot lighter and a lot, quicker as a result. So maybe we see a different element of Ray Davis's game this year. But you're right. He can be that too. He can be that third down guy, if not Ty Johnson. Big Hugs is saying, Bills know how to do business. Jerry Jones could learn something from us. He could. I mean, he could learn something from a lot of GMs. But he has no intention on doing so from his track record. I just don't know how somebody like him could continuously do what he's done with these contracts without it being intentional. And I understand the angle, right? The media pub that you get from having a constant headline. CeeDee Lamb not getting paid. Dak Prescott not getting paid. Micah Parsons not getting paid. I understand, all publicity is good publicity. But it's getting to the point now where it feels like that's starting to come to an end with them. It feels like the fans are just sick and tired of it. It feels like the players are no longer willing to just put up with it. I mean, like Mike's saying, Jerry loves the publicity, and no one's arguing against that. No one, I mean, that's like calling the sky blue. But doesn't it feel like it's just getting to be a bit much now? He's been doing this forever, and now it gets to the point where you have Micah Parsons saying he no longer wants to be a Cowboy. We're getting to a breaking point here. And I wonder if things will change when his son fully takes over. I don't know. But it feels like Cowboys fans are at their wits' end. I mean, I host the NFC East Roundtable. Jay Tuck, the Cowboys representative, does a great job. And we were talking yesterday. We had a show, and Cowboys got rolled by the Rams over the weekend in preseason, and they also had joint practices, and the news out of those joint practices were that the Rams were just bullying the Cowboys. And now you have a first-time ever head coach in Brian Schottenheimer. You got Dak Prescott coming off of an injury. They are no longer even the second-best team in the NFC East. And from what Jay Tuck had told me, they've basically had it. He was telling me that this team just, from a physicality standpoint and from a overall, just will, right? Like a desire to play. The vibe he was getting from the preseason game, and really just the overall vibe right now, is it's just not what the Buffalo Bills are, that's for sure. I mean, this is why I've often referred to the Dallas Cowboys as the NFC's Miami Dolphins. They have a very similar feel, don't they? Big brand, a lot of loud fans. Comes down to the big game, they never win it. And I'm not just talking, what are you talking about? You're a Bills fan. You never win the big game. Bills are featured in primetime as much as any other team, and they win big games year after year after year. The Cowboys now currently have the longest NFC championship appearance drought in the entire NFC. If they don't make it this year, it'll be 30 years. Any big game in the regular season, they seem to find a way to lose it. From a physicality standpoint and an overall matching up, just over one-on-one against your guy, it always feels like they're inferior, as do the Dolphins. From the organizational standpoint, it feels like it's very dysfunctional. That's the one thing you can't overlook with these Bills that's been so great. It's been the complete opposite of that from top to bottom since Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott took over. It's been a model organization in terms of the way it's been run. All right, I'll take one last pass here to see if we have any more from Brandon Beane before we move on to talking a little bit about Hard Knocks. I'm not seeing much more. I mean, that's pretty much the end of it. We got all the details we need. I don't think we're ever going to get any inside look. We're never going to get any more. Or maybe we will, but not anytime soon, I would imagine. We're not going to get a bunch of details on how this all came about. just saw a tweet for this, by the way. What are your thoughts on Taylor Swift debuting her new album on Travis Kelce's podcast? What are your thoughts on that, by the way? Caroline's a big Taylor Swift fan. She didn't love it. And a friend of mine, we were at the lake the other day with some friends at their place, and they had the Happy Gilmore 2 movie on. I mean, Travis Kelce doesn't have a minor role. I mean, it's a minor role, but it's not like just a cameo. He's in it for like 10 minutes. Can never seem to escape the Kansas City Chiefs. I just felt like Taylor Swift debuting her album on Travis Kelce's podcast, that felt like a marriage type move. Didn't that feel like a marriage move? That's something you do when you're married. That's a big move. Like, because if you break up, like, you basically went and you're the biggest artist in the world and you debut your album on the boyfriend's podcast. It's a huge deal. Felt like a marriage move to me. As if I really care, you know. All right, let's talk some Hard Knocks. Episode 2 of the Buffalo Bills training camp featured on Hard Knocks aired last night on HBO. I was thinking we were going to see a bit more of the old school style Hard Knocks vibe in that episode. And what we got was essentially an extension of episode 1, which to me, fine by me. This has been a 2-part, up until this point, this has been a 2-part puff series, or it's been a 2-part puff piece on the Buffalo Bills, the first 2 episodes of Hard Knocks. So the first episode just really felt like it was a broadened look at the love affair of Josh Allen, the Bills themselves, the Bills loving Bills Mafia loving them back, the city of Buffalo, how much the Bills mean to the city, how far they've come, how great they are now as opposed to what they used to be, all of that great stuff. Episode 2, it felt like an extension of that. It was more story-oriented. We saw some great stories featured on the episode. We saw Damar Hamlin, of course, being featured and how he's gone from the incident that happened against the Cincinnati Bengals a few years ago to where he's at now and how much that's changed his life and how impactful that's been and, you know, how he's trying to take that adversity and do good with it, of course, having his own organization and bringing awareness to having CPR and defibrillators readily available. Got to get a look at how this whole thing has kind of affected him and how it's gotten him to the point in his life in which he's at now, which was cool. The Buffalo Joe story was awesome. I'm so glad that Hard Knocks spent some time on sharing the Buffalo Joe story with the masses because it is such a great story. And there was a point in the episode where there was a father who said to Joe Andreessen, you know, tell my son to work hard and he can end up being just like you. That is the story. I mean, that is the moral that Joe Andreessen represents. The story that he embodies is if you work hard, anything is possible. And you're watching him hang out with the family where he grew up in Lancaster, New York, looking through photos of him at Bills training camp and Bills games. You hear his mom tell the story about how he was dying for an autograph at Takeo Spikes when he was a young kid, and Takeo Spikes took the time to go and sign his jersey. Now Joe Andreessen is wearing that same logo, playing the same position as Takeo Spikes. There really is no cooler story than seeing a guy grow up in Buffalo, a lifelong diehard Bills fan, be completely unnoticed, be a guy that no one had on their radar, a guy that was not drafted, a guy that was discovered by the Bills, gets the opportunity to try out, makes the team, and then makes the roster. It's an incredible story. And when you saw that father say to him, you know, I tell my son, if you work hard, you can be just like you. It's the truth. Granted, those results are extremely rare, but they're possible nonetheless. I'm sure growing up, nobody thought that Joe Andreessen was going to be a Buffalo Bill. And I'm sure even by the time he got the opportunity to be discovered by an NFL team, nobody thought what has ended up happening here would end up happening. Maybe the only person that thought it was possible was him and his family. But he's, you know, they're sitting there in Lancaster looking through the scrapbook of old photos of him and the family at Bills training camp, and I have like an identical scrapbook with very similar pictures at training camp in Bills gear. It has that vintage look on the old photos you get printed out at Walgreens or whatever. And I'm sitting there thinking like that could have been anybody. Like that was me. I'm basically the same age as Joe Andreessen, basically the same age, grew up the same way. And that kid he's a Buffalo Bill. I'm sitting there thinking, could you imagine growing up like I did, diehard Buffalo Bills fan, and the whole family's a huge fan from the area or around the vicinity of the area, and then you become a Buffalo Bill? I mean, that's the stuff of dreams right there. That's the stuff that happens, and then you wake up. That's what he's living right now, and you really be hard pressed to find a harder worker. There's a reason why he's gotten to where he's at. He's still one of the hardest working guys on the team. You saw that clip of him nailing one of the Bills players. I forget exactly who it was, but he nails one of the Bills players going out on the sideline. You could tell he felt bad about it. And the Bills got on him. A couple of the offensive players got on him about it. But it's because he's going 110 miles an hour. He's constantly trying to prove himself each and every snap, because even though it's a great story, it's not guaranteed. His spot on the team is certainly not guaranteed. He's got to prove himself each and every opportunity that he gets. But I thought it was awesome that they featured that story because it is a great story. But what's even cooler is that it's become more than just a great story. I think Buffalo Joe has proven to be a solid depth linebacker for this team. I think Buffalo Joe has become linebacker 3 for this team. And when you factor in the injuries the Bills have faced at that position throughout the last few years, he's certainly a guy that could get time depending on what happens. Featured in 13 games a season ago. It's become more than just a great story. Joe Andreessen has earned the right to be referred to as a guy that you feel comfortable with in the depth linebacking role. Hell of a journey, so awesome, and was really cool that they were able to paint that picture for everybody outside of the Bills fan base who already knows very well the origin story of Buffalo Joe. Ray Davis was featured. That was cool. We got to get a little inside look at how he became the Bills' emergency kicker. There was a moment, though, that I thought was so awkward in that episode. Ray Davis is at training camp signing autographs. And somebody asks him, "You going to be running back 1 soon? You going to be number 1 soon?" And Ray Davis goes, Nah, I love James Cook. He goes, he's a bit better than me in that regard. The guy's signing an autograph for you, and he's taking the time to interact with you. You're only going to get a couple of seconds to ask him a question or be around him. I just felt like that was such an awkward thing to say. Gonna be running back 1 soon? What's he supposed to say? Yep, I'm gunning for the role. Gunning for it's mine. I was kind of taken back by that a little bit. I'm like, oh. Very diplomatic answer, though, from Ray Davis. He was mic'd up. I mean, not that he wouldn't have said the same thing that he did say if he wasn't mic'd up. What are you supposed to say? Really likable guy, though. I mean, the whole team is, really. There's one thing you can take away from this Hard Knocks. The Bills are one likable bunch. One likable group of guys. Ray Davis, just one more piece of that puzzle there. Featured him. We got another KJ Hamler scooter story. I feel like they spent 5 minutes on KJ Hamler getting the new scooter. That was such a hit last week that HBO was like, yeah, we got to follow up on that. That was like the biggest story of the week last week. See, this is what Hard Knocks has been for the Bills. It's been such a puff piece that the big story is KJ Hamler accidentally bought a kid's scooter as opposed to an adult scooter. And they focused in on that for like five or so minutes on that episode, where KJ Hamler gets a full-sized scooter and is riding around on it. They addressed the James Cook situation. Obviously, that's null and void now, but they addressed the James Cook situation on Hard Knocks. And I thought it was just kind of funny the way that they addressed it, because James Cook was holding in at the time. It is the biggest story surrounding the Bills, and it's the most adversity Brandon Beane has faced in terms of getting a contract done. And it was just kind of like, nah, this is happening. You know, James Cook's great. This is happening. He's holding in. Anyhow, let's check in on KJ Hamler's scooter. Whereas in years past, I feel like that would have been like the headline. That story would have been a primary focus of an episode with far more time devoted to it than what it was. I wonder how much of the structure of Hard Knocks has changed because of what happened with the New York Giants last year. That was such a bad look for the Giants and Joe Schoen that I wonder now if a team like the Buffalo Bills sees that and is now on the, you know, the editing floor saying, we're just going to make this look as good as possible. We don't want anything coming out that can be scrutinized like Joe Schoen was over the Saquon Barkley blunder. I mean, that was such a big story. Like that. You will forever be able to queue up on YouTube a clip of Joe Schoen in real time losing Saquon Barkley to the Philadelphia Eagles. You will be able forever to go into the office of Joe Schoen and watch him lose their franchise player to their division rival. And then the story, of course, only got more insane when Saquon Barkley would go on to have one of the best years a running back has ever had, win Offensive Player of the Year, and then win a Super Bowl. So I think a lot of teams watched that and said, yeah, if we're ever on this show, that is not going to be allowed to happen. And I think what you're seeing now is exactly that. Now, granted, the Buffalo Bills are certainly not the New York Giants. They are far from it. There's not as much dysfunction to showcase because there really isn't a whole lot of dysfunction that exists within the Bills organization. Far easier to showcase that with the Giants, who are very dysfunctional. But I think there's no doubt in my mind that we're not going to probably see that again because of just how much of a bad look it was. I'm still stunned to this day that the Giants allowed that out because from what I've been told, the teams do have the power to say, hey, we don't want to feature this or that or whatever. And Walt's bringing up a point here that I was just about to get to. He's saying, obviously we don't have much of a sample size, but I think Hard Knocks might be a product better served for bad teams than well-run and good football squads like the Bills. It needs conflict, and I think that is the ultimate takeaway here. I think that there's a reason why the NFL required teams featured on Hard Knocks to have missed the playoffs the year prior, because that means that that's a team that's trying to work their way up. That's a team that clearly has issues to the point in which prevented them from getting to the playoffs the year prior. And with those issues features drama, with those issues features conflict, and with the conflict and the drama features great TV. The Bills don't have much drama. They don't have any conflict. They don't have any dysfunction. They're very well run. They have a superstar quarterback. Like, there isn't a whole lot of must-see TV there unless you're a Bills fan and you just want to watch your Buffalo Bills any chance you get in any capacity. But like I said at the top of the show, I think that if you are a non-Bills fan, this is not a very exciting watch. Yeah, I guess it's cool to see the stories of some guys and whatever. I always like that stuff too, regardless if it's Bills players or not. But if you're a Ravens, Bengals, Chiefs, Patriots, Dolphins fan, there's no way you're enjoying this. There's just no way. And hey, tough luck. Sorry. But there's no way you're enjoying it. You know, consequently, I was loving the hell out of the New York Jets Hard Knocks when they had Aaron Rodgers because I just knew it wasn't going to work out. I'm sitting back watching. I'm like, man, this is so great. They're blowing this team out of proportion. I mean, they're hyping these guys up to no end. This is not going to be what everybody thinks it is, and I just love watching the hype because I know it's going to deflate, and of course it did. But Walt, you're making a great point. It's the same thing I thought. I think that maybe there might be a lesson learned here from the NFL, or maybe there isn't. Maybe they no longer want to go with that approach. Maybe the NFL no longer wants to showcase the underbelly of dysfunction. And that would make a lot of sense. How does the NFL benefit from showcasing bad teams, bad management, bad front office, bad organizations? How does the NFL benefit from that? It's honestly not a great look on them. I mean, we've seen this in the past. I don't know if you know this, but within Madden, the NFL got rid of certain things that Madden was able to do because it was a bad look on the NFL. Like in Madden now, you no longer can suffer a concussion as an injury. If a player gets injured in a Madden game, it won't be a concussion. They got rid of that because of the massive concussion controversy that the league faced about a decade or so ago. So it's a bad look on the NFL to even be associated with concussion, so they got rid of it from the Madden game. You can't get a concussion. So the NFL will do things to avoid further scrutiny or to, put themselves in a bad light. And I mean, at the end of the day, who could blame them? It's a multi-billion-dollar corporation. It's the biggest sport in the country by a drastic margin. I can't fault them for wanting to showcase the best of the best at all times. So maybe that was the reasoning behind this, where they were thinking, wow, the Giants really did not look good on Hard Knocks a season ago. We don't want to continue to show the ins and outs of not good in this league, so let's show some good. Let's get the Bills on there. But what you get with that is way less drama, way less conflict, way less dysfunction, and because of that, it's just less entertaining TV. If this was the Chiefs or the Ravens, the Eagles or whatever, would you be enjoying it right now as much as you are? No, you wouldn't. I've enjoyed Hard Knocks every year for the reasons everybody else has, and that's because you're watching struggling teams trying to figure it out, and you're watching struggling teams struggle. And from the perch we've been set upon since Josh Allen took over, it's really fun to watch the dysfunction, is it not? We know what dysfunction looks like, what it feels like, and what it's like to root for, believe me. So when Josh Allen has allowed you as a Bills fan to be propped up on a pedestal, it's nice to sit on that pedestal from the outside looking in and watch the dysfunction unfold. It's fun. Pop the popcorn, kick back on the recliner, and watch it all go down. But when you have a great team, it's more so just, let's just show how great this team is and why. I'm loving it. But if it's going to be the same thing next year with another great team, I don't know if I'll be as locked in as I have been in years past on Hard Knocks. I thought the episode 2 was not nearly as good as episode 1, just because I think that the overall newness of episode 1 was really a pivotal factor in the enjoyment of it. And I just think the episode 1 was overall better because it was a broader look at the Bills. This was more nuanced, and it had the individual stories, and it was more focused on the last week here going into the preseason game. One of the moments I loved was when Sean McDermott called Marv Levy. One thing I love about the Bills is the way that they incorporate and respect previous legends. The Bills do a hell of a job of making sure that the guys that came before them are recognized and are still involved. In 2 episodes here, you saw Thurman Thomas out there on the field giving a speech to the team. This past episode, you saw Sean McDermott call up Marv Levy, wish him a happy 100th birthday. Jim Kelly has lived in Buffalo his entire adult life since becoming a Buffalo Bill, as has Thurman Thomas, Andre Reed as well. Steve Tasker is literally still one of the main faces of the Buffalo Bills, the host of the Bills' flagship television show, the face of multiple local Buffalo businesses. Steve Tasker still literally is one of the biggest and most recognizable faces in Buffalo. The Bills have done such an extraordinary job of continuing to allow the past legends to remain legends in Buffalo. And that was one cool thing I thought was featured on the Hard Knocks episode was Sean McDermott calling up Marv Levy there. I loved Marv, what he had to say. Marv was like, as busy as you are, you're still calling me? Oh, look at you. As busy as you are calling me? Oh, God. Thank you so much. What a guy. What a legend. 100 years old, still as sharp as he was in the 90s. You just love to see it. Still out going to stuff. He was at the Hall of Fame a couple of weeks ago, and everybody sang happy birthday to him. Shout out to Marv Levy, man. What a life. What a life. And I think he's one of the more underrated NFL legends. Because, of course, the connotation to Marv Levy is 4 Super Bowl losses. He's still a head coach who led a team to 4 straight Super Bowls. It's never been done before, and it's never been done since. An all-time legend. Leader of one of the all-time teams in NFL history. 100 years old, a Hall of Famer, and is synonymous with the Buffalo Bills. So cool. And I love to see Sean McDermott calling him up and pay his respects to him on his 100th birthday. That was awesome. You know, I thought it was cool, too, by the way, we got a little bit of an inside look on Sean McDermott's skin cancer situation, because it's always notable this year when Sean McDermott is out on the practice field in 90-degree heat and he's got a long-sleeve shirt on and a bucket hat on and pants. I didn't realize that Sean McDermott coached alongside another coach in Philadelphia who had passed away from skin cancer. I was not aware of that. It's moments like this. It's cool. You get a more in-depth look at things you already know about but didn't know everything about. And he takes it really seriously, obviously. I didn't realize the extent in which that went. So that was cool to kind of see that be featured, because it's obviously a known thing, but I didn't know the extent in which it went to. But that was really the main focal point of the episode. A little bit of Sean McDermott there and his story, Damar Hamlin's story, Buffalo Joe's story, a little bit of Ray Davis and how he became the emergency kicker, a lot of KJ Hamler riding around on a scooter. What else was there? Is it safe to say it was more of a forgettable episode than episode 1? I think that's safe to say. It was more forgettable than episode 1. My favorite part about it was definitely the Buffalo Joe storyline. Yeah, I mean, that was pretty much it. What else am I forgetting? Anything? Oh, yeah, Brandon saying, did you see the part where they excused James Cook from the meeting? Yeah, I did. I didn't know what was going on there. Was he getting a phone call and he had to go take it? Or I didn't know what was going on there. My initial thought was, do the coaches not want him to see the plays because they could be getting rid of him? That was my initial thought. Like, why ask him to leave? I didn't know what was going on there. Brandon saying, also, crazy they did no origin story on Ray Davis. Yeah, he's got one of the craziest stories in the league. That's a good point. Because they did feature Ray Davis. That would have been the perfect opportunity to incorporate his story into the episode. Maybe they will. I doubt it, though. They already featured him a good amount. That would have been a good opportunity, though. Ariola saying something I was thinking about here, too. Hamler has a career as a stand-up after football. He is a funny dude. It wasn't even the scooter thing that was funny. When he caught the touchdown pass in the preseason game, he was mic'd up, and he comes to the sideline. He's like, I was running down the field. I was going, oh shit. And then they go to the mic'd up audio, and he's literally going, oh shit. And then he catches the ball. Funny dude. That's an easy guy to root for there. KJ Hamler. And he's gotten some pub, right, on this Hard Knocks. He was like the main feature 2 weeks in a row, or at least a substantial part of the episode 2 weeks in a row. Walter's saying, I just don't feel like the Hard Knocks storylines are as organic as most seasons, which leads to stories of unknown players. These first 2 episodes seem very intentional to focus on key guys. Yeah, I felt that same way, too. This is why I go back to wondering whether or not there is more intention in what is being showcased because of the Giants situation last year. You also factor in the Bills being maybe the best organization that's ever been featured on Hard Knocks. They don't have a whole lot to work with. I mean, God bless the Hard Knocks crew. They just don't have a whole lot to work with. How much can you show how great Josh Allen is? So there has to be pre-baked stories in order to have episodes here. I mean, they have got to craft up stories in order to fill a 50-minute time slot. So I think your theory there is pretty spot on, Walter. A lot of these stories are definitely concocted in the pre-production meetings, I would imagine. Whereas in years past, you're watching guys who are struggling to make the team or whatever else you're watching those stories unfold in front of you, and then you get their story in conjunction with whatever's happening out on the field. Now, granted, like, they still were able to link back the stories we got from Ray Davis and DeMar Hamlin and Buffalo Joe back to the field and what they've done or what they're trying to do or whatever. But it did feel more like we're going to focus on these guys this week. Like, DeMar Hamlin was certainly, that had to have been a focal point. The Buffalo Joe, you could have gone an episode without focusing on Buffalo Joe based on the body of work or the preseason game or whatever. That was definitely intentional. But that's fine. I mean, I think you're going to have to do that. If I was working with the Hard Knocks crew, I would 100% be understanding of going about it the way that they have, because I think you have to. No, and Corey, you're putting it perfectly here. You're saying I wouldn't say it's fake. That's who we are. We're a good team. No, you're right. It's not fake. It's not. It's real. I mean, all those stories are real. They're showcasing what's happening on the field, whatever. It's all real. It's team. And the reality of a good team is that there isn't a whole lot of bad things to focus on. That's why I was kind of stunned that they didn't hone in more on the James Cook situation, because it was really the only storyline that has any element of drama in it. Now that's off the table. So maybe next week we'll see how they got to the deal getting done. I don't know. But now that the only element of drama that was on the table is now off the table. So I think we're going to get 3 more episodes of a lot more of what we've seen here. For sure. They also showcased a good amount of the QB2 competition between Mitch Trubisky and Mike White. That's been a big topic amongst Bills fans this offseason. So they did a good job of showcasing that. That's one prominent storyline right now that I don't think was manufactured. That's just one that is the current situation unfolding in Buffalo. So we saw a little bit of that too. It's kind of cool to see Brandon Beane mic'd up, by the way, up in the owner's box there too. Just feels like when you watch Pagula and Brandon Beane in the owner's box, like evaluating the game, it kind of feels like ancient times, like an ancient Rome where you have like the emperors or whatever up in the top seats, like staring down, watching it all unfold very strategically or whatever. Or it's kind of like watching, like what you ever watch the Kentucky Derby and they show the owners or whatever. It just feels different, right? They're watching it through such a different lens. You have thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of fans there watching fanatically. And then you're watching their angle from the owner's box, and they're just sitting there very strategically, right? Analyzing everything. Emotion doesn't swing one way or the other. If it's good, it's a fist bump. If it's bad, it's just write a little note on the piece of paper, move on. It's cool to watch that unfold. And you see Brandon Beane like at the iPad with his glasses on, like getting to work. Because at the end of the day, too, the other thing about the GM, most notably, it's, getting contracts done, addressing the media, being a face of the organization, a lot of PR involved too, right? But what they don't show you is like you're basically an accountant. I mean, you really are. It is a white collar desk job. It is a very public, popular, well-known, and coveted desk job being a GM. I would imagine the majority of Brandon Beane's hours do not incorporate negotiating contracts and addressing the media. The bulk share of his day probably involves him sitting at that computer, looking at the cap, looking at what they're going to do next year, the year after that, 5 years from now, right? Looking at who's going to make the roster, and based on that, how are we going to structure our cap surrounding who's on the team? It's probably a lot of looking at Excel sheets and stuff, right? It's not all glitz and glamour, that's for sure. Definitely a lot of grunt work there that people are doing on a day-to-day basis, just not surrounding figuring out whether or not the Buffalo Bills are going to be able to get under the cap, But anyhow, I think that's about it for now. 9:45 a.m. here on a Wednesday morning, August 13th, and 2 hours in the books with breaking news and the news we were hoping to hear this week, and that is James Cook extended by Brandon Beane of the Buffalo Bills, a 4-year extension that has him remain with the Buffalo Bills through 2029. $30 million guaranteed on a 4-year, $48 million deal. So that is great news for us fans to see the hold-in for James Cook come to an end and to finally see this contract situation, which has been hanging over the Bills for the last several months, be resolved. And now all that's left is to get into the regular season, get to work, and take another crack at that Super Bowl. The one thing you kind of had dangling over you that you may have been concerned about was this James Cook contract situation. That is no longer a concern, will not be a concern for at least the next 5 years. They get it done. Once again, $48 million deal over 4 years, $12 million per year for James Cook, $30 million guaranteed, makes him now tied for the 6th highest paid running back in the NFL. He's happy. Beane's happy. We're happy. A happy Bills is a happy life. And the Buffalo Bills are able to get that done, put it in the rear view, and zoom on in to preseason week 2 coming around the bend here, where they will have a joint practice with the Chicago Bears on Friday and will play a preseason game against the Chicago Bears on Sunday night. I'm sure we'll see a good amount of that on next week's Hard Knocks too. But that's what's around the bend. And how many days away are we now from kickoff? I think we're 25 days away from the first game. So plenty of time for James Cook to get back out there, get ready to rock, and make this ancient history. But hey, I'm so glad you were able to tune in on a Wednesday morning with me and crack out some breaking news, break down the James Cook contract, react to it in real time. Awesome stuff. It's great. All right. I hope you have a great rest of your day. 2 hours in the books here on a Wednesday morning off the breaking news of James Cook's contract extension. So glad to share it with you. Hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday, a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you later in the week. But until then, much love, as always, and go Bills.